Hey guys, Brandon here with Pebble Creek Outdoors, and today we're going to be doing a trap prep video. Today's video is going to be kind of covering some basic guidelines that I use when I buy a stock trap. So a lot of folks may think that you can just buy a trap and pull it out of the box and put it into the ground and go out and trap, which you can. But there are some things that you can do with some basic hand tools that I'm going to show you here shortly to make that trap operate at its peak performance and its best level, and also allow you to customize that trap to what you're actually trapping for. So we're going to go into that. I'm also going to show you guys kind of a side-by-side comparison of two traps, one that is purchased fully ready to go with all the modifications, and one that is not, and what you need to do to try and get that trap to perform at that same level. So without further ado, I'll show you guys a better view of these traps and we'll get started. So what we have here are two Bridger number 3 traps. On the left here we have a stock Bridger number 3 offset jaw, which basically just means that the jaws have a space, and it allows the levers to engage fully while closed in on the animal. A little bit more humane and powerful setup, in my opinion. They're both offset. Other than that, it's 2 coil, which means it has just the 2 springs on it. So there's literally nothing extraordinary about this trap at all. They have a great jaw size. They're a very good coyote trap. You can catch coons in them as well. I catch all kinds of critters. It'll hold them, and it's very good. Good jaw size, good pan size. Just a really good all-around trap. These can be purchased for a pretty good price. I think they're anywhere between $11, $13, $14, somewhere in that area. What you see is what you get. On the right side, you have a Bridger number 3 fully modified 4-coiled dogless setup. That's a whole mouthful. Essentially what you have on here is you have laminated jaws, which give you more surface area on your jaws. You have 4 coils, which means you have twice the power. Like I said, you have the offset jaw in there. And then one of the really neat features with this is it has the dogless pan system on it. Essentially what this is instead of having a dog like the stock trap will and having to notch it in, it comes with that and actually engages or latches onto the jaw of the trap. It's a very, very, very smart, very simple system. This really is able to free float, and it comes pre-night latched on here as well. It's just a really good setup. Another feature I will say that I think is really neat about the Bridger is that Bridger comes, even with their stock traps, they have a reinforced back plate and they're center swiveled. Dukes and a lot of different cheaper traps will be swiveled off to the side. It's not a game, it's not a game ender by any means, but if you have a coyote or coon or anything on there, having that center swivel is just really nice, and it is so much better for holding on to the animal. If you can imagine, an animal who's caught in that trap, they can swivel here and it's off of the center, so that means all the pressure is at a 90-degree angle. It's straight with the animal. If it's swiveled or if it's anchored off to the side, excuse me, what will happen is that animal will pull, and it will have a tendency for its foot to move to the corner of the trap. And what you'll find is when you catch an animal in a side anchored position like that, the animal's foot will be over here, and the potential for fur damage and slippage, anything like that, is much higher. So when you catch them, you want that trap to be straight up and down and hold level with them. And that just seems to be a lot better setup. Duke doesn't really do that out of the box. Bridger does. There's a few other that do it out of the box. You will pay a little bit more for a Bridger stock, or modified, or anything for that means, but you do get a lot of value out of it. So it's something I would suggest. With these fully modified setups like this, your price point's going to be much higher. I don't know exactly what the price is on this particular trap, but you're getting up in the 20 range. You know, to go out and buy, you know, a dozen of these, it can hit you in the pocketbook pretty good. My philosophy has always been in trapping is to, you know, if I can do it myself, I'll do it myself, and you know, if I can fix something up, I will, to serve the purpose. We don't get a lot of money for fur these days, and so it's hard to justify, you know, spending hundreds of dollars for fully modified setups when, you know, for a little bit of elbow grease I can turn this trap very similar to this. So that's what we're going to kind of show you here in just a minute, and how I do it. Alright guys, here is pretty much the whole tool list that you're going to need to do some basic out of the box modifications. So I'm going to kind of explain the concepts, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it for each particular one. So first off, we'll kind of go over the anatomy of the trap. You know, this is worth noting, and just knowing why you do something, I believe, is you know, half the battle in really learning how to do something well. I struggled with this for a little while, just not really understanding why I was doing certain modifications, so I'm hoping to kind of alleviate that for those of you who are trying to learn this. So first off, what you have obviously is your trap. This is a coil spring trap, you know, not a long spring, coil spring trap, noted by the coil springs. It has 2 levers on each side, and you know, this trap has a pan and a dog. That's what they call the dog right here. Okay. This here is the latch portion. Sometimes it's called other things. I just call it a latch. And this is where the mechanics of the trap really, you know, come into play. So with this is going to be pretty much the same with every coil spring trap. You're in anything that's built off of those standard principles, those standard, you know, how it's built. So what we need to do when we first get a trap is, first off, it'll be covered in grease to keep it from rusting. So what we need to do is boil that off. I've got videos on that. You can boil them in baking soda, get the grease off, clean them off real good. I recommend you know, getting a light coat of rust on the trap like this one has had, dyeing and waxing your traps, or using some other kind of dip to protect the trap. That's going to give it protection from the elements. I have videos on those, so we'll kind of skip past that part. So first thing out of the box, what you're going to have is, these things are manufactured in China, most of them, and they're just thrown together by, you know, some people in a sweatshop, and they just put it together real fast and they throw it out the door. So the first thing you're going to notice about your trap, and this one's already been pretty well completed, but what you're going to see is your trap pan is probably not going to be level. That's very, very important. It's going to be twisted one way or another. You want that trap to be level. That's going to screw up. If it's not level, it's going to screw up a lot of other adjustments that we do, and it's not going to sit in the bed well. You know, when you bed these traps, especially for coyote traps, everything is flat. You're trying to put it on a flat surface, and the only thing, you know, unless you're actually moving the trap, you know, to that surface, you want this pan to be the same as your base plate. You want it to be flat and level, and that goes from, you know, what I would call side to side, and then also, you know, kind of your pitch up and down this direction. You want everything to be flat and level with the base plate. How do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple. You're gonna get this, so say it's cockeyed. I like to take a little crescent wrench, or even a pair of pliers or whatever, and I will hook it on here, and I will bend that, you know, up, down, whatever, get that level. So that will take care of that. That's going to get your pan on the level right here for that initial adjustment. Now there's still going to be room for it to be off, but we're going to fix that with another step later. Second thing we're going to do is we are going to adjust our pan tension. When you get this bolt in here, all this is just a cheap brass bolt with a like locking nut on there. And what you can do is use your standard flat screwdriver. Sometimes you'll need to put a pair of pliers on that nut, and you're going to loosen and tighten this. And what we're looking for is nice, smooth play. And when we actually get to firing the trap and adjusting it, we're going to get into that a little bit more. But yours is going to be floppy. It's going to just flop around more than likely, or it's going to be so tight that you can't hardly do anything with it. That's how it's going to come from the factory in my experience. So we're going to adjust that. Right now I want it just smooth. I want some tension on there, you know, somewhere around 1 or 2 pounds of pressure. I've been doing this for so long, adjusting traps. I don't need to use a trap adjuster to really kind of gauge it anymore. I kind of do it by feel. You guys can purchase one of those at F&T or wherever you go, and that'll help you out as well. But that isn't the final adjustment. This is just a you know, kind of a initial adjustment that we're going to do to get that pan so it's not flopping. So make sure that that's a nice smooth, got some pressure on there, and it doesn't wiggle. Okay. Next thing that we're going to do is we are going to make adjustments, and we have to make a decision here. So this trap is going to be used specifically for, you know, trapping coyotes. I want to night latch this trap. Night latching is, and I have a video that really kind of shows specifically how I do night latches, but what it is in concept here is you have this big large gap, and I'm going to try and bring my camera up here so I can show you guys. There's a large gap right here that dog fits into this latch. Well, what it will have is it will have a lot of play before it actually fires, or travel. The pan will have lots of travel. Some smart coyotes out there will feel that travel push down, and they will immediately disengage the set. I'm not saying it happens all the time. You can catch a ton of coyotes, any critters, without doing this. It's just a little added extra benefit. So what we do in concept here is we take a file. This is your standard flat file. I don't exactly know which kind this is, but the way you'll gauge it with your trap is that it will have just a small amount of surface from that latch sticking up over that file. What we're going to do is we're going to lay that file nice and flat, how it would sit on there parallel with the base plate, and we're going to file a notch in there. As you file that notch, what that is going to do is it's going to give a hair trigger set. So when you put pressure on it, when you set your trap, it's going to lock up into that tiny little pocket, and then when that coyote or whatever engages that set, he's only got millimeters to move the pan, and then it fires. So it's a hair set. Think of it as, you know, a hair trigger set on a rifle or shotgun or something like that. It's just that it gives a very small amount of travel to throw that trap, so that animal doesn't have time to back out of that set when he engages it. It's at the perfect tension. He hits it, and you got him. Okay, guys. So once we have that filed in there, I'm going to show you guys what the night latch looks like, and also a secondary adjustment that we're going to make regarding the pan. Okay. So here we are, we've got it set, and what I have is I don't have the night latch engaged. You'll see that my pan is really at an extreme angle right now, and that's because it's sitting in the large gap. So what I'm going to do now that we've filed that notch out, that night latch, I'm going to put my hand underneath of this bar here. Don't do it from on top here. You'll only do that once when you screw it up. Put my hand underneath, with my hand resting underneath of the trap, and you guys are going to hear an audible click. You hear that? So what that tells me there is that I've done the night latch correctly, and it is now engaged. So now at this point, you'll notice this is a fairly well adjusted trap. You can see that that pan is nice and level. Well, if you do your night latch and that pan, let's say that pan is kicked way up or kicked way down, if it's running shallow or if it's running too high, there's another final adjustment that we're going to do that's going to fix that. So what we're going to do is turn our attention over here on our dog. So on this mount right here that holds the dog in place, it goes here to the latch and the pan. We want to get this pan level. So say our pan is dipping down. So say this end is too far down. What we're going to do is take a crescent wrench, probably one a little bigger than this, unless you got some super hand strength. And what we're going to do is we're going to bend this bar right here. We're going to bend it out. What that's going to do is it's going to create space, and it's going to raise the pan in order to engage that notch. If it's too high, if this end is poking straight up in the air, we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to push that in and level that pan. Takes a little bit of time. Once you get it set, it's good to go, and they really don't ever move. You'll have to adjust it maybe one time when you ever get the trap. After you do that, you should have a nice level pan. Everything should be set. Now we can check our tension on the pan, the actual pan tension. Like we did before, we adjusted that pan tension with a flathead or Phillips screwdriver right on this nut right here. So what we're going to do is either by using a pan tension gauge, which you would push down and see how many pounds of pressure that you need, or you do it by feel. It's totally up to you, and it also depends on what you're trapping. So if you are, and this doesn't even just apply to using the night latch system. If you don't have a night latch, you can still adjust your pan tension with a set trap like this. There's nothing wrong with that, and I recommend it. But essentially what we want to do is we want to kind of have that area or that pan tension set for that kind of animal that we're going to catch. Now, everybody's going to have varying opinions. I like about a 3-pound pan tension for coyote. Less than that for coon. Coyotes have a very tender foot as far as how they step, but they are a little bit heavier animal. And, with the night latch engaged in there, I run a pretty, crisp trigger on there. But with a raccoon, they're a little bit more stumbly. They'll kind of fall into things a little bit more. But obviously you don't want it too tight to where that animal won't actually set off that trap. But you don't want it too sensitive either, because anytime that you're setting the trap, you're gonna have a tendency to catch yourself. You're gonna have a tendency to have certain issues with if something were to fall towards it or whatever. You want to make sure that they're actually engaging the pan and setting it off. So not too light, not too heavy. You got to find that sweet spot in there. But yeah, this trap is here, and I'll show you guys it. With firing it, it's just that quick. I mean, it just literally, you put that little bit of pressure on there and it snaps shut. Anyway, so that right there is pretty much in a nutshell, using these 3 simple tools, is how I get this trap tuned up to do just as good of a job, in my opinion, as a fully modified setup, with a few exceptions. But in its standard operating, functions very, very similar to a fully modified trap. Like I said, this will apply to your coil springs, and some other traps that are similar. Yeah, that's pretty much everything that I do with a brand new trap out of the box in a nutshell. Video was entertaining and educational for you today. A little bit of tools, a little bit of elbow grease, and you guys can have your traps up and running like a pro. You know, you don't have to go out there and spend a ton of money on the best top of the line traps fully modified. You can just get them done yourself, and you can have the pride in knowing that you know how to do that skill. If you don't, that's fine. You know, that's just something that everybody has to make a decision on and figure out what they want to do. So I appreciate you guys watching the video. I hope, like I said, I hope you guys found it entertaining. Make sure you guys leave a comment. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let us know what you want to see in the future. We're right here in the middle of October in the state of Nebraska, and we are getting ready to ramp up trapping season. So there'll be a lot more videos coming out, a lot more educational stuff. We're trying to get a series done as well. So I really appreciate you guys' support, and hope you guys are all getting ready for trapping and getting your trap modifications done. So anyway, with that, I'm Brandon with Pebble Creek Outdoors, and I'll see you on the next video.